Okay, 7th grade, welcome to your first ed puzzle. As we discussed in class, someone asked if this first ed puzzle could be about geometric sequences, so that's what we'll do. Each term in a geometric sequence increases by a common ratio, so it could also be referred to as a common factor. So let's take a look at some examples of things that are geometric sequences and things that are not geometric sequences. If we look at the sequence 3, 15, 75, 375, and on, we could then determine whether or not this is a geometric sequence by examining whether, as I go from one term in the sequence to the next, if I'm going up by a common ratio. So if I go from 3 to 15, I multiply 3 by 5 in order to get 15. To go from 15 to 75, I also multiply by 5. To go from 75 to 375, I also multiply by 5. So in this case, the answer is yes. This is a geometric sequence, and our common ratio is 5. So in this particular case, the common ratio is an integer, but common ratios don't always have to be integers. Sometimes common ratios can be fractions. And if a number is decreasing in absolute value, then we know that the common ratio must be a fraction. So let's take a look at an example that is like that. Okay, if we have the sequence 4, 2, 1, 1/2, etc., and we examine this one, well, we notice that when we go from 4 to 2, we're dividing by 2. When we go from 2 to 1, we're dividing by 2. When we go from 1 to 1/2, we're dividing by 2. But we need to remember that the definition of division is multiplying by the inverse. So in other words, dividing by 2 is the very same thing as multiplying by 1/2. And we know that from division with fractions. We do a keep, change, flip whenever we do division with fractions. We keep the first fraction the same, we change the division to multiplication, and we flip the second fraction. So this is basically saying the same thing. Dividing by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/2. We always want to express our common ratios as what we're multiplying by, not what we're dividing by. So in this case, our common ratio would be 1/2. And if we were asked to find the next terms in the sequence, all we would do is take the last number, which is 1/2, and we're going to multiply 1/2 by our common ratio, which is 1/2, and we would get 1/4. If we wanted to find the term in the sequence after that, we would take 1/4 and we would multiply by our common ratio, which is 1/2 again, and get 1/8. And we could keep on doing that. So these, let me bring up some different colors here. These are our next terms in the sequence, the 1/4 and the 1/8. So let's look at one that has a common ratio that's negative. Okay. Let's look at -4, oh sorry about that, -4, 1, -1/4, and 1/16. We notice something here, that there's a pattern that each term in the sequence alternates signs. We have a negative, and then a positive, and then a negative, and then a positive. Whenever you see that pattern, that means that your common ratio must be a negative number. So if we look at 4 to 1, or that would be dividing by 4, but it's not just a 4, it's a -4. And if we go from 1 to negative 1/4, we're dividing by another negative 4. And 1/4 to 1/16, we're dividing by another negative 4. So that's dividing by a negative 4 is the same as multiplying by negative 1/4. Okay, so the common ratio then is negative 1/4. And if we wanted to find the next terms in the sequence, we would take 1/16 and multiply it by a negative 1/4. And we would get negative 1/64. And that would keep our pattern. As we saw, we had negative, negative, positive, negative, positive. Now we would have another negative again. So, as I pointed out or said earlier, whenever the absolute value is decreasing, such as it is here, 4, 1, 1/4, 1/16, that means that your common ratio is a fraction. Hopefully this helps, and hopefully this kind of gives you an idea of what the Ed puzzles will be like. This really wasn't intended to be a new lesson, and it's just to kind of give you a sample of what's coming ahead. So I hope you enjoyed this and are looking forward to doing this in the future.